happening? What's doing?
Josh, you guys were able to effectively run the ball. How much of that was Luke Goedeke's return, not just what he was able to do at right tackle, but the mentality he brings along that offensive line?
Yeah, it never hurts to get a starter back. So having him out there, and a little bit like we talked about last week, being a tone setter and the way he practices and communicates was huge. And then I thought we did a better job as well of getting a hat on a hat and committing to that on some of the runs that we had talked about that might have been 5 or 6 yards, and now they turned into, I think we had a couple that were 11 yards, and Tuck had one that was explosive. I think it was 18, 19 yards. But it takes all 11 like we talked about. But Luke's a huge part of that. Getting him back, or any starter, is always going to elevate you, so that was great to see from the run game side of it and to get him back on the field.
On that 4th and 3, you guys did, I think, protected really well throughout the game. Is that just like miscommunication, or was that just a bust on that where Baker was under pressure and had to kind of make that desperation pitch to Rashad?
Right. It's like he talked about after the game. It was the communication side of it and a look that we had in practice and executed in practice, and then we get into the biggest part of the game and we don't do it. And we got to be able to do it at that point when the stakes are the greatest. And that comes down to that finish mentality. We did that well the first 4 weeks or so of the season, and then we get down to that spot where we need it the most and we didn't. So we failed as a unit and we were off the field, and it hurt us. So we got to be able to take over what we do in practice and execute it at a high level, even in crunch time right there.
Going back to that Detroit game, it seems teams have been playing a lot more man coverage, and given the issues with the offensive line and there's the injuries, pass protection hasn't been holding up great. It seems like it's been harder for Baker to find his receivers or for them to find separation against that man coverage. Is there something that they need to do, or maybe you need to do schematically wise, to kind of get them into more open space to give Baker those easy checkdowns when he's facing the pressure?
Yeah, I think it's twofold on that in terms of how Detroit played it and some of those spy coverages where they do have a man defender that's on bake, where no matter where he goes, the guy's going to be shadowing him. So when it comes to that point, someone else has to win versus man coverage, because in a lot of those looks, if it is man coverage, the checkdowns like you would see from backs and zone coverage are not really there. So ultimately, we have to be able to execute what we're doing in practice on some of these plays to get open versus man coverage. And it's always something we look at as coaches too, are we giving them enough weapons to be able to go beat man coverage? But when those looks are there for the design plays where we are being able to get rub routes or things of that nature, we got to be able to protect it and get the ball out to our playmakers, let those guys get a conversion, keep the drive going.
Bucky and Godwin have been limited, but they've been out there the last couple of days. How do you go about preparing, game planning? Do you have a good feel for which, if either of them will be available? How does that work?
Yeah, with them being limited and still having another day, we'll see how this week goes. But it is definitely something early in the week where you try to plan around what's the chances you're going to have this guy in the game plan versus is he going to be down? And if it's something where you don't feel like he's going to be up that week, then we would never want to take a rep from somebody that might be in the game and playing the game away from those guys. So it's definitely something we look at. It's just good to really have those guys out there, especially having Buck and seeing Chris as well, just because of the energy those guys bring and the way the other guys feed off of it is really good to see.
All right, do you have them out there during the install periods, or they're just kind of doing teams and stuff like that as well?
Yeah, they're really there for the install portion of it as well. Even some of those guys that might not be up for that week, and you see Chris in there all the time, where if we're putting together pass concepts and watching tape, because his feedback's invaluable, just being able to pass that stuff along a lot like Chris does, or a lot like Mike does to those guys as well. So when we install it, they're all in there together, and then we walk through it before we actually practice it, so everybody's definitely involved in that side of it.
Josh, what did you make of Baker after the game? He was like, the mistakes that we make in practice, we're not correcting it, it's happening in the games. We got to get the killer instinct. Do you agree with that? And what did you think when you heard him speak out?
I agree with it. I echoed everything he said really on Monday as well, because when you have a practice week and you're having a play and it might not have been executed the way you wanted to execute it, there's not a lot of time to be able to run a lot of these plays multiple times because you move on to the third down or the red area, and guys got to be able to correct it at that point and know when we get in the game, you have to be able to execute this thing at a high level. and you might not get even another rep at that, especially full speed to do it. And when he talks about the killer instinct, I would echo that as well, because we were coming off of a bye week and guys got time off, and we talk about starting fast, and we go down there and we get 7 points, and then you go down the second drive and it sputters out. And that's, I think, where the killer instinct needs to come in, that 7's not enough, especially when you're playing some of these high-powered offenses, that it's got to be for 60 minutes. If it takes more than that, it takes more than that. But you can't just let off just because you got 7 off the first drive.
You guys are playing the Buffalo Bills coming up, and you guys had success running against the New England Patriots, and this Bills defense really seems to struggle with defending the run. Obviously, running the ball is always important for an offense, but is it potentially even more so, or are you putting extra emphasis on that this week, knowing how poorly they defended that run?
To be honest with you, it's more of the first part of your question. We put emphasis on it every week, and we want to stay balanced. We want to be able to establish the run early. And this week is really no different, whether they was the top rushing team in the league or the worst, no matter what it is. We really approach it the same way with the thought we're going on the road. You need to be able to run the ball on the road and establish that to really open up a lot of other things as well.
Last week, Megan, drew a top corner that kind of traveled with him. You're seeing, obviously, a lot of safeties over the top, but he's still productive, right? Still over 100 yards. So how has he adjusted to that extra attention that he's going to get without Mike or Chris on the field?
Yeah, I think he starts to look at, not that he wasn't watching some of those top corners earlier in the season, but now knowing that if it was Gonzalez, like, hey, this guy's going to travel wherever I'm at, and just knowing his tendencies, and then knowing if they do have a double on him, what's the leverage where the window could be opened differently if he's singled up versus if Scott's defending me and you're defending me, then I might have a void right here in the middle. So those are kind of things that goes into it, but he sees that more and more. I thought he's done a good job of keeping the production up even with some of those doubles.
Josh, it didn't get in, but that 2-point conversion was an 8-man line and potentially a throwback. One of the more creative looks we've seen.
Yeah, unfortunate. Very unfortunate. Carlton Davis, he saw it. So he just stayed on the backside of that, and we're trying to throw it to Baker, and it did not work.
Speaking of Carlton, Tez seemed to be cooking pretty good against him earlier in the game. Baker wasn't really looking that way. I'm not sure if that was a progression thing, but he did connect with Tez later in the game, those 2 touchdowns for sure. Is that just kind of the development between the relationship between a rookie wide receiver who's having to come in, and he was probably the 6th guy on the depth chart at the beginning of all this, but right now he's probably number 2. Is that just part of a chemistry thing that they're continuing to build, not even just week to week, but in game?
Absolutely. I would say the chemistry on the practice side of it is definitely something you see more because he's in there, of course, with the ones now. So he's getting all the throws and routes on there. He's getting all the throws in practice. In terms of how the game unfolds, I wouldn't say that he just ended up finding him late. There's still things that are designed for him early and getting it to him, and the ball just didn't go his direction. But I thought Tez did a really good job on both of those, on essentially turning into a scramble drill and him having the wherewithal to not run out of bounds and be in the right area, because I think Bake talked about it too. A lot of these scrambles, they're not designed for Bake to run it, so we're trying to get these guys in the right spots to throw it, and Tez did a really nice job on both of those on really 2 critical plays in the game.
People talk about the identity of a team, the identity of an offense. Do you think your team has an identity on offense yet, and what do you think that is?
Yeah, I'd say that we lean on being able to be balanced and have both the run and the pass and being disciplined and being the most physical unit. We've talked about that going back to the spring. I thought we cleaned up some of the pre-snap penalties we had talked about when it came to the New Orleans game. But as an identity, it's what do we need that week to be able to beat that opponent? And there has been a little bit of shuffling from positions and things of that nature, but the identity and the toughness and the discipline we talk about and the consistency we talk about shouldn't really change whether there's a backup in there or there's a starter in there.
Going back to the Bills defense, what makes Joey Bosa so good at what he does?
Really good. He plays really hard. I think he's even playing at a higher level than he did last year. With these guys coming off the ball, he creates challenges as well as having Rousseau on the other side. So it's not like you can just look at one side and you're going to be able to handle the other side as well. So the ability of both of those guys, but his play speed, his strength, the pad level that he plays with when he comes off the ball, and he's pretty relentless. So he's playing at a high level right now.
Bet the game that Maxwell Hairston is starting to pick up. First interception against Mahomes. He had another interception last week. That's what he was drafted to do.
Yep.
Become that playmaking corner, and missed some time at the beginning of the season, but now healthy and is making plays for them.
For sure. You hit the nail on the head. He's playing well. A couple of those interceptions, you can tell that he has the ball skills that in our routes and where Bake's going with the ball, we got to be cognizant of where he is, because not only can he run, but he can play it in the air. And you can tell that he's learned a ton from that scheme. I got a lot of respect for Coach McDermott, especially going against him for so many years in Miami, and what Trey White's probably passed along to him in terms of their scheme and the communication levels. These guys disguise it really well in terms of the back end of the coverage, and so you can tell he's a great fit for him. I know Brandon Beane brings in really good guys into that unit there as well, so he seemed like he's fit in great, and he's playing at a high level right now.
This offense has lost a lot of players due to injury and is very different than the one that you initially thought you were going to have out here. What's been the most challenging or the hardest part of adapting with all the players out, or what position group specifically? Has it been, getting the wide receivers? Has it been the O-line? What has kind of been the most difficult challenge for you with all the injuries?
Because it's been different position groups, I'd say it's been more week to week on what can those guys do well and just making sure that they're in the right spot to be able to execute the scheme. And it's a little bit like we talked about here before, where Charlie might have a different skill set than necessarily Luke. Not that we want to get into the specifics on that side of it, but just putting those guys in a position to make plays. And then if it is a guy like Tez who's coming in the game he might have a different speed than, say, Mike or Chris, and be able to use him in those ways too. But I wouldn't say it is challenging, but it's also fun to be able to, like we talked about before Tez played, it was his opportunity to go out there and prove himself to the league, being a 7th-round draft pick and coming in here and not really having an opportunity to play early. And now he's really took it and ran with it, and the opportunities he's had, and he's only getting better and better.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Josh.